Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Wanted to share a little Dvar Torah. It's actually for last week's Parsha. I should have remembered to share it then, but I'll share it now. There's a tool that I think is little underappreciated, that's little appreciated or underappreciated in the Jewish world, and that is a little thing called Targum Unclus, right? Which is a major thing. And many people will say, Shnai Mikra, Vechet Targum, not really pay attention to it. I think it's important to pay attention, particularly when you have certain words that are key words, that, and particularly words that Unclus will translate in different ways the same word. One of those words is ger, one of those words is malach. But a particular word that I find interesting is kohen. And there are various translations that Unclus uses to translate the Hebrew word kohen into Aramaic. And so often is a cognate kahana, which if you look in the Art Scroll translation, depending on who we're talking about, sometimes Art Scroll in English will take the Hebrew word kohen and merely transliterate it, kohen. And that's it. And they're not going to translate the word. And that's particularly when we're talking about the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohanim B'nai Aharon, the priests of the lineage of Aaron, like my great-grandfather was, my mother's father. Then you have, sometimes Art Scroll will translate it as generally the English translations, King James and those that are based on it, will use the word priest to translate Kohen practically everywhere. I don't know if there's anywhere that King James uses the word Kohen other than priest. And the same thing, all the translations that are based on that, including the Jewish Publication Society from 1917. But if you look in Unclus, the Aramaic Targum, the Aramaic translation of Scripture, which is an interpretive translation and not a literal translation, the word Kohen is often translated in different ways. And so, like I said, when Art Scroll would say Kohen, right, and even other places where Art Scroll translates it in other ways, I think one place it translates it as minister, or ministers, Kohanim, the plural is ministers. Maybe more than one place it says that. But like I said, generally, Kohen is transliterated, not transliterated, but cognated, I would say, as kahana. Some places, for example, when talking about Jethro, who is called Kohen Midian, there he is listed, Unclus does not say Kahana de Midian, but rather it says Rabba de Midian, the chief of Midian. It doesn't mean rabbi, I wouldn't say. It means the chief, it means a political leader. But of course we've discussed other times that there's a difference, there's very little difference in ancient times between political leadership and religious leadership, which is the same thing that you could say, in other tribal affiliations, whether a Native American tribe might have a chief, but he's also a spiritual leader, or a Asatru or Theodish tribe will have their Gothi, who is both a Hamshar or something that they might use as a term for their religious leadership. and it's similar to how Jethro was Kohen Midian, but Onkelos says he's Rabba the Midian. In last week's Parsha, we have a figure that's piqued the interest of many, many people over time, and that's Melchizedek. English, it's rendered as Melchizedek. Generally, the Jewish tradition seems to identify that that's not his name, but rather his title, but also his way that he identifies himself. So Malki means my king, and Tzedek means righteousness. So my king is righteousness or righteous. Although the planet Jupiter, it's also called Tzedek, so I don't want to get into that question. Let's just stay away from that for now. What that could mean. But he is called Melchizedek, Melech Shalem, the king of Shalem. Kohen L'Kel Elyon, the priest to the Most High God, right? But the fascinating thing is that Onkelos, and I believe this is the only place where Onkelos translates like this, although it would make sense in other places. But he does not say Kahana, L'Kel Elah. He does not say Rabba, L'Kel Elah. That wouldn't make any sense. That he's the master, the chief of the Most High God. That doesn't make any sense. You know. Kahana Kodem Kel Elah. That would make sense. But it doesn't say Kahana. It says Mishamesh Kodem Kel Elah. It says he is a servant before the Most High God. Actually, in Arabic and Aramaic speaking churches, a deacon is called Misames or Mishamish. Like, or in our synagogues, the sexton, the beadle of the synagogue, was traditionally called a Mishamesh. A shamus. And so for those people who are concerned about what is the Melchizedek priesthood all about, I know the Mormons are very interested in the difference between the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood. I know that's a big deal for the Mormons. By us, we believe that the priesthood sure was passed through Melchizedek and passed over all of his descendants straight to who we believe to be his descendant Abraham, because our traditions say that Melchizedek was Shem, the son of Noah. And that because Melchizedek praised Abram before he praised Most High God, the priesthood was taken away from him and handed directly to Abram. And then the priesthood was passed to Isaac and Jacob and Levi and Amram, Kohath and Amram, and then to Aaron and his sons, is how it would seem. But in any event, there's something Rashi brings there about the priesthood of Melchizedek that's very interesting, because when you look at traditional Christians, they look at Melchizedek as a typology of their, the guy that they are really into, and with him serving as a priest and a king, they see that as a typology, but also with him bringing bread and wine out to the people, that is indicative of the sacraments of the Christian church, the various churches of Christendom. But Rashi doesn't say that, because we also sacramentally, for lack of a better term, use bread and wine in our religion. We know that. That's where, of course, Christianity took that from us, obviously, and transformed it somewhat. And so the churches see Melchizedek bringing out bread and wine as a token of the sacrament. But Rashi says the people were tired, the people were hungry, the people were thirsty. They just fought a war. And he was bringing them bread and wine, not so much to satisfy their souls, but to satisfy their bellies. And that was to satisfy his soul. And so when he's Meshamesh, he's a diakonos, he's a servant. That is the priesthood of Melchizedek. It's the priesthood of servitude. And so someone who I look up to very much, the Chacham Rabbi Ariel Bar Tzadok, he says that really you want to embrace the Melchizedek priesthood, you have to be a servant. You have to be down in the trenches where people are in need and serve them. You gotta get your hands dirty like the Kohanim did, being butchers, slaughtering cows and sheep and goats and birds, getting their hands dirty. Not to sit on a throne and be some kind of a big shot, and wear a fancy robe. And I like wearing fancy robes. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that. But to go and be directly involved, to serve, to help people, like the Baba Rebbe, who wore fancy robes, but he would help people get jobs. He would help people find shidduchim. He would be intimately involved in people's lives. He'd be a father for them, but he'd be a servant for them. And that's what we're supposed to do. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.